because Cuba obviously needs oil to function in a very basic way. So after Trump made that threat to put tariffs on countries that are shipping oil to Cuba, apparently Mexico decided to cancel an important oil shipment to Cuba. What happened is the state oil company canceled a shipment, whereas the central government is still claiming to be doing humanitarian shipments. But the state oil company is the state oil company. The central government has a level of say in it and what it does. So if they wanted to, they could make those shipments, but they clearly are just letting them cancel it. So they had to blame for it. Trump's fucking justification, masterclass. They are still lying a little bit. I mean, they could just say what they want from Cuba, honestly. I don't even know what they want from Cuba. Cuba doesn't fucking have anything to give them. What does it have? Sugar? You don't need sugar. You're the USA. It's basically like a pet thing of Marco Rubio, right? Like Marco Rubio wants to be the president of Cuba. That's why they're doing this. He's a bit a little bitch. Marco Rubio never tells anyone the truth that his parents, his grandparents, whichever one it was, his family, migrated before the revolution in Cuba. They fled from Batista, and he still puts on like the Cuban Exile Act. He's a pathetic loser. I'm not even sure if he speaks Spanish, to be honest. He probably doesn't. He's desperate to be like the president of Cuba. He's not even Cuban. Never been to the fucking country. According to Trump, Cuba provides a safe haven for terrorist groups such as Hezbollah and Hamas. Great. Yeah, it's full of Hezbollah and Hamas. They're all over Cuba. That's a justification for this. So cutting off energy to Cuba, you know, it's not just for cars and shit. It's not just for transport. It's for everything. It's for electricity, you know, basic shit that everyone needs day to day. This is like a starvation attempt. It's also nothing particularly new because this has been the idea behind the Cuban embargo the whole time. The very second that the US initially imposed the blockade on Cuba, internally they were very clear about why they were doing it, because they thought that the government was too popular and they had no way of spurring a real rebellion against the government because of that, except by, I quote, taking every possible means to weaken the economic life of Cuba, to, as adroit and inconspicuously as possible, make the greatest inroads in denying money and supplies to Cuba, to decrease monetary and real wages, to bring about hunger and desperation and overthrow the government. They want to impose starvation on Cuba. They want to make the people suffer and give them no choice but to overthrow their government so that the US allows basic goods and food to enter the country. It's like an ultimatum. Overthrow your government or we'll kill you with literal starvation. This is what it's ultimatum. Overthrow your government or we'll kill you with literal starvation. This is what it's always been. It's not particularly new here. Just they're sort of more open and obvious about it. It's also less clear as to whether they want to actually invade Cuba or what. Because Cuba as an island, which is already embargoed, is more vulnerable to economic sanctions and such than Venezuela was. So maybe an oil embargo could totally fuck it, especially because it needs tourism. It's not just the oil embargo. Cuba makes a lot of foreign exchange currency that it then uses to buy stuff like oil from tourism. And, having a looming threat of an American invasion or shortages of basics like fuel there is going to make less people go there for tourism. I mean, you can't really blame them. So it's a massive multi-pronged attack on Cuba. And then they might also invade and attack Cuba. Just outright do that. Who knows? And it's looking like as well the Venezuelan oil is going to be cut off to Cuba. I mean, this was a huge part of why Marco Rubio is so pushy for the Venezuela invasion in the first place, because this guy is obsessed with Cuba. It's his personal thing. Marco Rubio fucking wrote, I kid you not, these people are so pathetic. We are ruled by the most pathetic people in the world. Marco Rubio wrote in his 2012 memoir, I will someday lead an army of exiles to overthrow Castro and become president of a free Cuba. The concept of a Marco Rubio memoir. What the fuck? He was 40 years old back then. What are you doing writing a memoir? You're a bit young for that, and you're also not important enough. But he did write it. And then he said that he's going to become the president of Cuba. It's so pathetic. All of them are so pathetic, man. Like, we're ruled by a cabal of pathetic loser pedophiles who just want to starve people to death because it gets them off. I guess the hope is to, like, starve Cuba and turn it into, like, another haven that they can fucking recruit, like, children from or kidnap children from for their vile purposes. Cuba's already in shit since COVID. The economy has really failed to recover. In large part, obviously, because the American embargo under both Trump and Biden has continued unabated. But it was already a very delicate situation. You know, back in 2020, 2021, you had the first real protest in Cuba in the entire history of the Cuban Revolution. Sorry, there was one real protest as well as in 1991. There was the second real protest. And obviously the situation is only going to be exacerbated and get worse if countries like Mexico and Venezuela do not have a fucking spine. Because tariffs on Mexico would hurt the US just as much as they do Mexico, right? Mexico and the US have intertwined economies. The US gets massive advantages from free trade with Mexico. Trump would not be able to maintain tariffs on Mexico. They would hurt his domestic popularity because people living in, like, especially like the south of the US, their prices would go up and they'd be sad. So Mexico has to stand firm, but thus far it's looking like they might not. We need them to give Cuba all the oil so that Cuba can survive and its people don't starve to death under the foot of American imperialism while Americans at home don't protest or do anything about it. The only, like, half-decent thing right now is that it seems that the Americans aren't committed to actually attacking Cuba militarily, but that could change day to day. If they, like, see a shiny object and forget about Iran, they might decide to attack Cuba. It seems like that's what they're doing. Hopefully they go for Greenland instead. That would be the lesser evil out of all the potential targets. Let's invade Greenland. But yeah, not looking too great. When the president of Mexico was asked about the Mexican state oil company halting an oil shipment to Cuba, she didn't deny it. What she said rather is that she's going to continue the humanitarian shipments, but the actual commercial shipments from the state oil company have been stopped, and she doesn't say anything about it because she knows how bad it's going to look to her base who want Mexico to help Cuba, you know? So it's not looking good. It's looking like we're going to get some nice little abandonment of everyone and everything, and everyone's just going to bow before the fucking Yankoids. No resistance. The only light at the end of the tunnel is that Trump is antagonizing Europe so that the imperial countries will eventually eat each other. But hopefully Cuba survives to see that happen. Because right now it's totally unclear. The USA might attack Iran within the next week. Honestly, they might have already attacked Iran before I even upload this video. That's how unsure things are right now. They have been moving lots of forces to Iran in a way that is not just like posturing. They not only moved like a naval strike force to the proximity of Iran, but they have been making a lot of movements of military planes from the US to bases surrounding Iran, something that, to be clear, is only possible because the US has bases, not specifically bases, but they have either bases or permission to use other countries' military's bases or like civilian airports in basically every single country on the way to military planes. From the US to bases, they not only moved like a naval strike force to the proximity of Iran, but they have been making a lot of movements of military planes from the US to bases surrounding Iran, something that's a naval strike force. They not only moved like a naval strike force to the proximity of Iran, but they have been making a lot of movements of military planes from the US to bases surrounding Iran, something that, to be clear, is only possible because the US has bases, not specifically bases, but they have either bases, way that is not just like posturing. They not only moved like a naval strike force to the proximity of Iran, but I'm unsure things are right now. The USA might attack Iran within the next week. Honestly, they might have already attacked Iran before I even upload this video. That's how unsure things are right now. They have been moving lots of forces to Iran in a way that is not just like posturing. They not only moved like a naval strike force to the proximity of Iran, but they have been making a lot of movements of military planes from the US to bases before I even upload this video. That's how unsure things are right now. They have been moving lots of forces to Iran in a way that is not just like posturing. They not only moved like a naval strike, things are right now. Before I even upload this video. That's how unsure things are right now. They have been moving lots of forces to Iran in a way that is not just like posturing. They not only moved like a naval strike force to the proximity of Iran, but they have been making a lot of movements of military, lots of forces to Iran in a way that is not just like posturing. They not only moved like a naval strike force to the proximity of Iran, but they have been making a lot of movements of military planes from the US to bases surrounding Iran, something that, to be clear, is only possible because the US... They have been moving lots of forces to Iran in a way that is not just like posturing. They not only moved like a naval strike force to the proximity of Iran, but they have been making a force right now. They have been moving this video. That's how unsure. They might attack Iran within the next week. Honestly, they might have already attacked Iran before I even upload this video. That's how unsure things are right now. They have been moving lots of forces to Iran in a way that is not just like posturing. They not only moved like a naval strike force to the proximity of Iran, but they have been making a lot of movements of military planes from the US to bases surrounding Iran, something that, to be clear, is only possible because the US has bases, not only moved like a naval strike force to the proximity of Iran, but they have been making a lot of movements of military planes from the US to the proximity of Iran, but they have been making a lot of movements of military planes from the US to bases surrounding Iran, something that, to be clear, is only possible because the US has bases, not specifically bases, but they have either bases or permission to use other countries' military's bases or like civilian airports in basically every single country on the way of military planes from the US, just like posturing. They not only moved like a naval strike force to the proximity of Iran, but they have been making a lot of movements of military planes from the US to bases surrounding Iran, something that, to be clear, is only possible because the US has bases, not specifically bases, but they have either bases or permission to use other countries' military's bases or like civilian airports in basically every single country on the way to Iran. So they have been flying tons of planes from the US to like Spain, from there to like the Middle East, and then to like some base in the vicinity of Iran. They are clearly gearing up for either a threat against Iran or an attack on Iran, or obviously both are possible at the same time as well. But the only like shining light here is they've been doing this in a way that makes it clear they want the Iranians to know about it because the planes have their transponders on. And it's interesting how behind the mainstream media is on this, because people are posting the flight tracking data on social media for the like planes outside of just the planes that are associated with the naval strike force. They haven't even reported on this, even though all of this was done. Like, I can't find a single article that's just neatly going over the movement of the aircraft rather than just the ships that have been openly talked about. And with the naval strike force, they haven't even reported on this, even though all of this was done. Like, I can't find a single article that's just neatly going over the movement of the aircraft rather than just the ships that have been openly talked about and announced. Like, random morons on Twitter have been tracking this flight data, and there's not a single like article from a decent news of the planes that are associated about it. because the planes have their transponders on. And it's interesting how behind the mainstream media is on this, because people were posting the flight tracking data on social media for the planes outside of just the planes that are associated with the Naval Strike Force. They haven't even reported on this, even though all of this was done. I can't find a single article that's just neatly going over the movement of the aircraft rather than just the ships that have been openly talked about and announced. Random morons on Twitter have been tracking this flight data, and there's not a single article from a decent news outlet that's neatly summarizing this. This one, for example, is summarizing selection of the planes that they moved. They moved a couple of B-52 bombers, I think it was 6 F-35s, a bunch of refueling aircraft, and troop transports as well, which is interesting because the Americans did once try a massive troop transport operation into Iran, and the planes crashed and they aborted it. Operation Eagle Claw back in 1980, where they were trying to rescue Americans rightfully taken hostage by the government of Iran and people who hate America, rightfully so, the people of Iran. And they sent in a bunch of troop transports and helicopters and shit into Iranian territory to try and launch a straight up attack to rescue the hostages, and they just crashed and left. And the sort of shit that they are moving to the vicinity of Iran is eerily indicative of something like this. The only saving grace, as I said, is that all the aircraft seem to have, or most of the aircraft at least, seem to have their transponders on, which means they want to be seen, which means there is at least some element of it being a threat rather than it being an actual guaranteed invasion. Though you never know with Trump. You never know. But there is some indication transponders on, which means they want to be seen, which means there is at least some element of it being a threat rather than it, or most of the aircraft at least seem to have their transponders on, which means they want to be seen, which means there is at least some element of it being a threat rather than it being an actual guaranteed invasion. Though you never know with Trump. You never know. But there is some indication of their transponders on, which means they want to be seen, which means there is at least some element of it being a threat rather than it being an actual guaranteed invasion. Though you never know with Trump. You never know. Of something like this. The only saving grace, as I said, is that all the aircraft seem to have, or most of the aircraft at least seem to have their transponders on, which means they want to be seen, which means there is at least some element of it being a threat rather than it being an actual guaranteed invasion. Though you never know with Trump. You never know. But there is some indication. For example, there's a couple of reports that are impossible to confirm, where Saudi Arabia told, or at least according to a senior Gulf official, whatever the fuck that means, which has been reported in a couple of different outlets, let's not just to confirm, where like Saudi Arabia told, or at least according to indicate invasion. Though you never know with Trump. You never know. But there is some indication. For example, there's a couple of reports that are impossible to confirm, where like Saudi Arabia told, or at least according to a A senior golf official, whatever the fuck that means, which has been reported in a couple of different outlets, not just this one. I think it was first in Reuters. Saudis won't allow airspace for military action against Iran, Crown Prince says. Okay, that's better than a senior.
する。
your official. So Mohammed bin Salman actually told the Iranian president this, which could be an indication that the Saudis have actually discussed this with the US, which could be an indication that there is actually a strike. Dropsite News also claim that American Middle East allies have been informed that they should be prepared for an attack on Iran. Now, how reliable this is, who knows, but it does seem like that American Middle East allies have been informed that they should be prepared for an attack on Iran. Now, how reliable this is, who knows, but it does seem like they're gearing up for some sort of attack. Senior US military officials have informed the leadership of a key US ally in the Middle East that President Donald Trump could authorize a US attack on Iran this weekend. Well, it's the weekend at the point that I'm filming this. It's Saturday, and thus far the attack hasn't happened. Knowing my luck, it'll happen while I'm streaming or right after I turn off the stream. Strikes could commence as early as Sunday. Okay, that's tomorrow. So be on the lookout for that. Maybe it won't happen, who knows? Hopefully not, if the US decides to move forward. This isn't about the nukes or the missile program, this is about regime change, said a former US intelligence official who consults for Arab governments and is an informal advisor to Trump admin on Middle Eastern policy. He told Dropsite that US war planners envision attacks against target nuclear, ballistic and other military sites across Iran, but will also aim to decapitate the Iranian government, and in particular the leadership and capabilities of the IRGC. The Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. It sounds to me like they might want to do a Maduro on Iran, which is not really possible. I at least hope that Trump has become so delusional from the Venezuela attack that they think they can do that to Iran, because they fucking couldn't. Come on. They actually have real defenses. Of course, Israel is trying to push them into doing it. You know, not a surprise, according to this article at least, who knows. Hopefully it's all wrong. Hopefully it's all wrong. But yeah, they are... Hopefully it's all wrong. Hopefully it's all wrong. But yeah, they are moving masses of forces to the vicinity of Iran. And given that the last time they did this, they ended up actually attacking the country that they did this to, Venezuela, it might be a safer bet to assume that they are going to actually attack it in some way than to just think it's all a bluff. And given like the recent crackdown on protests in Iran and such, and also the Mossad agitation in those protests, really murky as to what actually happened. But either way, people are right now like doing things that, if they do anything, I mean, they probably don't actually result in anything. It's all just useless back and forth on social media more than anything else. But nonetheless, if they did result in anything, it would be assisting with this, right? People are like, oh, you can be against American intervention and hate the Iranian government at the same time. They just murdered a bunch of people, blah, blah, blah. This is like the Saddam Hussein situation. This is like the pre-Iraq war situation. It's like, is this really the time to be talking about how bad the government is, even if they are bad? Is this really the time for that? They're literally potentially about to bomb the country. What could talking about that ever do in this moment, aside from enabling that? You have to think beyond just what makes you feel moral and good, and think about the potential wider consequences of the rhetoric that you're engaging in. Whose side you might be enabling, because you can't not take a side when one side is about to drop bombs on the other. You know, the Iranian people don't need your support. They don't need you to throw your hat into the ring and talk about how bad the government is, because every single one of the most powerful countries in the world says that same thing. Every single one of the most powerful countries in the world, aside from China, wants the Iranian government destroyed. They want that country to have a Syrian civil war situation as soon as possible. They want hundreds of thousands of dead. They want mayhem. They want chaos as soon as possible. So when you're like, oh, solidarity with the Iranian people, what's the point of that exactly? They don't need your fucking solidarity. Like, the people who are on your side right now, and you saying that the people who are trying to bomb Iran, they want to bomb Iran as soon as possible. It might be better for you to just shut the fuck up. Hold your tongue. Feeling good, feeling like you're moral, is maybe not as important as not assisting in doing propaganda in this very moment where the USA is potentially days away from launching like a massive attack on the country, unprecedented in modern history. Even bigger than the last one. Because if you want to help in enabling something even worse than what the government has been doing lately in Iran, that's what you do. So just think about outcomes instead of what makes you feel good and moral and what feels right to you in the moment. Otherwise, you will do nothing but enable imperialism over and over and over again. Like, the only shining light of this situation would be if Iran retaliates by shooting lots of missiles at Israel. Maybe more than last time even. That is the only possible light at the end of the tunnel here. Everything else that could come from this will be terrible. So think about what you're enabling. Does the Iranian government suck? Sure. But is this really the time for that? Is this really the fucking time to be talking about enable imperialism over and over and over again? Like, the only shining light of this situation would be if Iran retaliates by shooting lots of missiles at Israel. Maybe more than last time even. That is the only possible light at the end of the tunnel here. Everything else that could come from this will be terrible. So think about what you're enabling. Does the Iranian government suck? Sure. But is this really the time for that? Is this really the fucking time to be talking about that? What are you possibly doing in saying that when every single Western country is currently on board with like military action to overthrow them? We know what you are. It's obvious. So, I made a video a few months ago about how American and also Western unions in general are very pro-imperialism because obviously a union is about getting benefits for its members. Even one that isn't captured by the state is still like that. And they're gonna be pro-imperialism because why wouldn't they? Because being on board with imperialism, trying to get a better share for their members from imperialism, it's what they're for. The whole point of them is to give their members more shit. At least, like, on the surface. Obviously, they're also there to, like, placate people into not taking more radical action, which they also do very well at. And a part of that is giving them those extra benefits. But as a result of the American massacre of 100 people in Venezuela and kidnapping of its president, this disgusting invasion, the reaction of some of the most significant American unions was immediately, we want our share. We want our share, Mr. Trump. And
so we're really doing this, huh? All things, good and bad, eventually come to an end. This is a universal truth that can be just as positive as it can be negative. Season 3 of The Boondocks ended on August 15th, 2010. And though the show's third season was not as popular or highly regarded as the previous two, it was clear that the ravenous fan base the series had cultivated over its 5 to 6 year run were still very hungry for more. There was about a 2-year gap between seasons 1 and 2, and about a 3-year gap between seasons 2 and 3. So a similar gap was expected for season 4. So I and all the other faithful Boondocks fans waited. And we waited. And we kept waiting until it started to seem like the show would never come back for that 4th season. I was in middle school when season 1 of The Boondocks came out. I can't really explain just how important that show was to my early development as an aspiring artistic black kid from the suburbs of America. Season 2 came out right at the start of my teenage years, and Season 3 released while I was in high school. Season 4 didn't come out until I was a sophomore in college. The small kid with dreams of being a successful artist and storyteller was now a young man busting his ass in college trying to make his dreams come true. The world had changed. I had changed. But despite being almost a full decade since I had discovered the Boondocks, I had always hoped that it would return someday and allow me to relive that joy from my childhood. Well, just like they say, be careful what you wish for because you just might get it. For many of us, myself included, the hype for season 4 of the Boondocks all started with this promo released on Adult Swim in March of 2014. In just 30 seconds, with nothing more than a walk cycle clip of Huey's silhouette and some transforming symbolic imagery in the background, This promo was able to generate more excitement out of me than what should have been humanly possible. My favorite show was coming back, and it looked as if it was going to pick up right where it left off. Nowadays, the entertainment industry is completely bloated and overflowing with reboots, remakes, and continuations to shows and movies from an era long since past. But the return of the Boondocks in 2014 was monumental. Everyone thought the show had been canceled or disbanded. Most fans had given up hope of it ever coming back. Well, they did get that chance. And on April 21st, 2014, the world was able to bear witness to the beginning of the end. Alright, before we actually get into breaking down the episodes of Season 4, let's cut the shit.
Cut the shit!
Of a very before of the Boondocks is episode of Season 4. Let's cut the shit.
Cut the shit!
Season 4 of the Boondocks is not Season 4 of the Boondocks. It's Season 1 of a very believable fake Boondocks ripoff. Just like Ace Hood's jewelry, it appears to be the real deal from a distance, but when you look closely, everything sort of falls apart. Sorry, Ace Hood. Throughout all of my Boondocks videos, I've made it a point to mention 3 people specifically. Aaron Magruder, the creator and head writer of the show, Rodney Barnes, another lead member of the writing team, and also the executive producer, and Carl Jones, another lead writer and voice of multiple characters, most importantly, Thugnificent. The greatness and success of the first 3 seasons of the Boondocks is owed to a lot of people, importantly, Thugnificent. And Carl Jones, another lead writer and voice of multiple characters, most importantly, Thugnificent. The greatness and success of the first 3 seasons of the Boondocks is owed to a lot of people, but in my opinion, it was due in large part to these 3 men and their chemistry that they had together. The details of what happened to break up this trio are still hazy all these years later, but based on random sound bites and interviews that Aaron Magruder and Carl Jones have done over the years, it sounds like Carl Jones was looking to branch out and do other things outside of the Boondocks, like Black Dynamite, Freaknik the Musical, and many others. And Aaron Magruder wasn't about these 3 men and their chemistry of people, but in my opinion, it was due in large part to these to the member of the writing team and also the executive producer, and Carl Jones, another lead writer and voice of multiple characters, most importantly, Thugnificent. The greatness and success of the first 3 seasons of the Boondocks is owed to a lot of people, but in my opinion, it was due in large part to these 3 men and their chemistry that they had together. The details of what happened to break up this trio are still hazy all these years later, but based on random sound bites and interviews that Aaron Magruder and Carl Jones have done over the years, it sounds like Carl Jones was looking to branch out and do other things outside of the Boondocks, like Black Dynamite, Freaknik the Musical, and many others. And Aaron Magruder wasn't too happy about him doing all that without at least talking to him first. Meanwhile, Aaron himself was apparently having a lot of issues with the network and was also getting tired of writing for the same characters in the same world and having to deal with censorship and bannings all the time. So he wanted to move on and do something different as well, i.e. Black Jesus. This basically meant that Season 4 was done without any input for Aaron or Carl Jones. None of their names appear on the opening credits for the episodes in this season in the usual places that they would usually appear. Although it is speculated that an episode or 2 was written, or at least thought of, by Aaron Magruder before other writers came in and fleshed out the idea. The best way I can describe what this behind-the-scenes breakup did to Season 4 is to compare it to LeBron James and Kyrie Irving leaving the Cleveland Cavaliers in 2019, and basically leaving Kevin Love and a bunch of bums behind. The results are shockingly similar. This is why I don't consider Season 4 of the Boondocks to be the Boondocks. If it wasn't written by the same people who wrote the original, then it might as well be considered a non-canon spin-off series at best. And I didn't know all of this going into watching Season 4 for the first time, but even when I went in blind almost a decade ago, I still remember feeling like something was off from the very start. The first episode of Season 4 is called Pretty Boy Flizzy, and it's all about a young and controversial R&B pop singer named Pretty Boy Flizzy, who is definitely not supposed to be Chris Brown in any way. Definitely not. Totally not Christopher Brown. Nope. Not at all. He is played by Michael B. Jordan though, and that's pretty dope. The episode is all about Flizzy getting into legal trouble in Woodcrest and hiring Tom as his lawyer. While trying to deal with Flizzy's absurdly destructive and chaotic lifestyle, Tom's already barely surviving marriage starts to unravel this legal trouble and chaotic lifestyle. Tom's already barely surviving marriage starts to unravel even further. And after initially not wanting Flizzy's help with his marriage, Tom finally agrees to let Flizzy take him under his wing and teach him about how to keep these hoes in check. This, of course, ends in disaster with Tom trying to fight Flizzy at Jasmine's birthday party because he thinks Flizzy is trying to have an affair with Sarah. But really, Flizzy is just trying to make Tom look like the hero so his wife will appreciate him a little bit more. I also gotta say that this line read from Cedric Yarborough is one of my favorites ever.
Come on, motherfucker! Ah, yeah!
All in all, I don't really think that this episode is that bad, but as I've said about Season 4 in the past, that's kind of the issue. The best way I can describe most of the episodes in season 4 is not that bad. They are passable, average experiences that I don't really think about or feel the need to watch again. Season 2 and season 3 had some episodes with that same kind of meh vibe to them, but they were surrounded by amazing, unforgettable episodes that made people need to watch again. Season 2 and season 3 had some episodes with that same kind of meh vibe to them, but they were surrounded by amazing, unforgettable episodes that made people like me fall in love with this show. Season 4 feels like a plane in cruise control and autopilot. I mean, this whole Pretty Boy Flizzy episode is alright, but it's a complete ripoff of the Tom, Sarah, and Usher episode from season 2. And why the f was this episode of the Tom, Sarah, and Usher episode from season 2? The episode is alright, but it's a complete ripoff of the Tom, Sarah, and Usher episode from season 2. And why the f was this episode the season opener? Season 4 is the only Boondock season to have a legit in-season story arc that takes multiple episodes to tell, but that arc starts directly after this episode. It's not like Chris Brown drama was so important and so in the news that they had to make sure that they capitalized on it immediately with this season. I don't know, season 4 is packed with so many bizarre decisions that just kind of talking about it at all makes me really mad. And we're just getting started too.
Pray for me now, and at the hour of my death, which I hope is soon. Amen.
I also want to mention that Tom and decisions that Chris Brown drama was so important and so in the news that they had to make sure that they capitalized on it immediately with this season. I don't know, season 4 was directly after this episode. It's not like Chris Brown drama was so important and so in the news that they had to make sure that they capitalized on it immediately with this season. I don't know, season 4 is packed with so many bizarre decisions that just kind of talking about it at all makes me really mad. And we're just getting started. Just kind of talking about it at all makes me really mad. And we're just getting started too.
Pray for me now, and at the hour of my death, which I hope is soon. Amen.
I also want to mention that Tom and Sarah's marriage, like slowly degrading over time in the Boondocks, was kind of funny at first, but I don't know. By the time season 4 comes around, I think they pull it to ridiculous heights, and it just makes me not like the characters as much, especially Sarah, who was always sort of just a background character, but the more they showed of her, the less I wanted to see of her. Episode 2 was called Good Times, and for me, this is where a lot of the deep-seated issues with season 4 start to form. The overall premise of the first 3 seasons of the Boondocks is that a small, dysfunctional black family from the projects of Chicago get a large inheritance after the tragedy of a family death, and then they move out to the production.
かつても凡人たちには白馬の仙人と呼ばれていたけれど、今や地上に降りて仙人となった身よ。ただ、紫伯と呼んでくれていいわ。
風と雲の勝負が決まったようだな。
ご期待に添えるよう頑張ります。
空が晴れ渡っている。遠出日和ね。
陣形を整えろ。 陣形を整えろ。
来た。
飛ぶか。
よっ。風向きに気をつけろ。
金で解決できるなら簡単だ。だから金はたくさん。
カクク落ち着け。よっ。
風が立つぞ。飛ぶか。
さあ行くぞ。風向きに気をつけろ。風向きに気をつけろ。
風が立つぞ。
よっ。さあ行くぞ。
飛ぶか。
風向きに気をつけろ。ほっ。
へえ。紅に染まって散りなさい。はっ。
風が立つぞ。
よっ。風向きに気をつけろ。
飛ぶか。
風向きに気をつけろ。
進め。
さあ行くぞ。よっ。
風が立つぞ。
さあ行くぞ。
風が立つぞ。
さあ行くぞ。かくく落ち着け。よっ。風向きに気をつけろ。
風が立つぞ。
さあ行くぞ。よっと。さあ行くぞ。かくく落ち着け。
風が立つぞ。
風向きに気をつけろ。
たもと先生入れて。
飛ぶか。風が立つぞ。今だ今だ。前段発射。
手伝って行け。
飛ぶか。
風向きに気をつけろ。
風が立つぞ。今だ今だ。はっ。よっ。今だ今だ。撃て。
おっと逃がすか。
先生入れて。
タッチで。今だ。ああ、キラキラで美しいな。風が立つぞ。
絹のような弱さね。やっはっ。やっはっ。
飛ぶか。はっ。飛ぶか。
よっだ。やはっだ。
風が立つぞ。
さあ行くぞ。
勝負か。
進軍頼んだよ。
移して片付けましょう。洗い清めましょう。はっはっ洗い清めましょう。そこ洞察と知恵の律令を三月よ輝け満ちて
灯火のもとに陰りな先生こちて強行へって
月が去ってしまった月を捧ぐ移して
頼んだよ。光の裁きを進軍俺につけ。
誰のものでもないならもらっても構わないはずよ。流れて
行ってあら灯火のもとに
雨上がりルビーが月を映す。一旦引きましょう。新月が来る満ちて
今だ。光の裁きを先生こちて強行
もうお供え物はいらないから君にあげる。
照準セットほっやったよっしゃ。
流れて三月よ輝く。
灯火のもとに陰りなし破竹のごとし血人
さあ菊か月が去ってしまった。満ちて
行ってあだ黎明の光を
今宵月を捧ぐ。
先生こちて
流れて
やった光の裁きを打った強行と
片付けましょう。せい行け。洞察と知恵が律令新月が来る移して
頼んだよはっ俺につけ 血人
三月よ輝け。
先生こっちでだ強行灯火のもと
移して
行って血人
新月が来る。
黎明の光を発くのごとす強行
流れて
頼んだよ神宮
三月よ輝け。いた。生きて
行って強行俺につけ
や。流れて家具のカラス7号式モジュール吸引
潔白を証明するときだ。射撃準備。
新月が来る。満ちて断罪のな6308。
悪を見極め影を刈り尽くす蒼天。
無双の風。
邪悪を狩り撃つ。射撃準備。
今宵月を捧ぐ。姿を見安全距離。
悪を見極め影を刈り尽くす蒼天。
夜の剣6308。
潔白を証明するときだ。
三月よ輝け。移して超拡散形態。
邪悪を狩り撃つ。影を撃つ。
吸引テストか。
潔白を証明するときだ。射撃準備。
今宵月を捧ぐ。流れて断罪の6308。
悪を見極め影を刈り尽くす。影を撃つ。
dominantly white suburbs of Woodcrest and try to adjust to their new life surrounded by racism and increasingly bizarre events, which is very similar to the plot of the old sitcom Good Times. One of the few areas I actually do give season 4 credit is that they did try to flip this idea on its head in this season and make it so that season 4 starts with the Freeman family losing all their money due to Granddad's terrible financial choices. They also finally introduced the middle Onceler, Eddie Jr., who was Ed Onceler Sr.'s son and Ed III's father. And just like the rest of the Oncelers, he's a greedy, conniving piece of shit.
You get me my money or you're fucking dead. You're fucking dead. You're fucking dead. Okay, see ya.
The entire episode is Eddie Jr. tricking Granddad into getting himself more and more into debt with him until the Freeman family are basically sold into pseudo-slavery. I said I give the writers credit for trying to flip this idea, but they really didn't execute it well. For one, doing this for 1, maybe 2 episodes might have been okay, but this Freeman family being slaves arc should not have gone on for 5 to 6 episodes. Half the season is spent watching our favorite characters just get shit on, while characters like Ruckus. This Freeman family being slaves arc should not have gone on for 5 to 6 episodes. Half the season is spent watching our favorite characters just get shit on, while characters like Ruckus rise to prominence. A large part of what made Ruckus so funny in the earlier seasons was that he would say these horrible things about how terrible black people were, while he himself was a lowly loser who lived in a beat-up shack and had to work menial jobs for black men like Granddad and Tom. Season 4 makes Ruckus part of the elite, which now removes half of the irony that made his character funny in the first place. Throughout this entire arc, Granddad is made to look like a complete moron and a spineless, selfish coward when that was only shown sparingly in previous seasons. Or at the very least, it was played up at times for comedic effect, but they always made sure to counterbalance that with scenes of him showing his true care for Huey, Riley, and the rest of the people of Woodcrest. And Riley, I mean, can we even call Riley a main character in season 4? My man gets like 4 lines an episode, and they're just shitty one-liners about something being gay.
Look how they massacred my boy.
And again, I have to say, on a pure surface level experience, this episode is okay. It's not painfully unfunny, it's not laugh out loud hilarious, it's just cruise control boondocks getting you to your destination in a completely safe and unremarkable way. The next episode is called Breaking Granddad, and I gotta say that I do like the Breaking Bad parody aspect of this one. I've only seen some of the episodes of Breaking Bad, but you would have had to be in a coma during the late 2000s and early 2010s to not know about this show.
You can't keep getting away with it!
The Boondocks had success parodying other shows and movies in the past, so it makes perfect sense for them to do an over-the-top Breaking Bad parody for this season. This episode is all about Huey developing what was supposed to be some sort of liquid nitrogen bomb that just so happened to also double as the greatest black hair formula known to man. After the family gets approached about selling this product by a very sketchy hair care company, the family gets strong-armed into illegally cooking up the explosive wave cream product in an RV, a la Walter White in Breaking Bad. For whatever reason, this is an episode from season 4 I actually did remember pretty well when I rewatched it. Maybe it's because the structure and premise remind me more of a season 3 episode. Anyway, the episode is also just alright. It has the same annoying connected plot of the Freemans being broke as hell and Ruckus having control over them, but the scenes of everyone with straight hair were pretty funny, and I like the general premise of everything, so not bad, but again, not really great either. The next episode is called The Early Bird Special, and it's all about Granddad, still desperate for money, becoming an emotional gigolo for lonely women. I say emotional gigolo because he doesn't actually have sex with these women. He's strictly paid to be a support system and shoulder to cry on for these very sad women. And that's a kind of funny idea for like a quick 4-minute sketch, but the humor starts to wear thin during a 22-minute episode. This episode is yet another example of a season 4 episode that is just funny enough to not be terrible, but doesn't have anything to offer outside of a couple quick gags here and there. And we're like 4 episodes in, and I bet you're realizing that I'm not diving as deep into these episodes as I usually do for these retrospectives. I just don't see anything to analyze here. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Season 4 is like a soulless husk of the Boondocks. It may look like the show from afar, but the more you look into it, the more you realize just how hollow it actually is. But the next episode is different. Freedom Ride or Die is a flashback episode about Granddad riding on the same bus as a group of Freedom Riders back in the Civil Rights days. And Freedom Riders were a real thing. They were a group of activists in 1961 who wrote. The more you look into it, the more you realize just how hollow it actually is. But retrospectives. I just don't see anything to analyze here. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Season 4 is like a soulless husk of the Boondocks. It may look like the show from afar, but the more you look into it, the more you realize just how hollow it actually is. But the next episode is different. Freedom Ride or Die is a flashback episode about Granddad riding on the same bus as a group of Freedom Riders back in the Civil Rights days. And Freedom Riders were a real thing. They were a group of activists in 1961 who rode buses into the South of America to combat segregation and racism. The funny part here is that Granddad got on this bus accidentally and wants nothing to do with them or their suicidal mission. And I always loved the quick flashbacks from Granddad's past from the first 3 seasons, and I had always hoped that eventually they would make a whole episode about his past. Pretty crazy that I finally got that episode in season 4 of all things. You're not gonna believe this, but I really like this episode. I know we still have half the season to go, but I'm just gonna say this here. This is the best episode of season 4. And when I say it's not even close, I mean this episode is in a completely different stratosphere than the other episodes of this season. This episode feels like a really good season 2 or season 3 episode. It's got great comedy with Granddad and that dude from the Allstate commercials going back and forth about their different ideologies.
Beat us, stab us, sick dogs on us, light us on fire.
Light us on fire?
Not that we're expecting that.
But we are prepared for that to happen.
You can't get prepared to get lit on fire.
It's got one of the best fight sequences in the entire show when they all get pulled over and have to fight the cops. It has a legitimately well-written and well-paced story. The only thing that stops this episode from being a true all-time great episode is that it just sort of ends. And this is another problem with a good number of the episodes in season 4. You can tell the writers either didn't have time to think of satisfying endings or just couldn't figure out how to end a lot of these stories. So a lot of them go out on a pretty lame joke and then just sort of fade to black. But anticlimactic endings aside, this episode is still great. And if season 4 got nothing else right, at least they got this one right. And we go from easily the best season 4 episode to maybe the worst and most embarrassing episode of the Boondocks ever. Granddad dates a Kardashian. Why does this exist? Why does this exist? Why does this exist?
No, could you not do that? You're gonna have a butt face.
I hate this episode. People think I hate the Mr. Medicinal episode from season 3. No. This is an episode I actually hate. This is the dumbest, most ridiculous, trash as f***ass episode of the Boondocks ever. Remember this scene from the Trial of R. Kelly episode from season 1 where the family were sitting down watching TV, they see a clip of Bobby Brown and Whitney Houston, who were a pretty hot topic at that point in time, and they're in court.
And I was trying to get a little bit more time on it. And it's my show, bitch!
You know, I think they're on drugs.
That was an example of the Boondocks acknowledging a stupid aspect of black culture that was culturally relevant at the time, giving it a short joke that it deserved, and then moving on to something much funnier and more substantial. The issue with season 4 is that the writers didn't have anything more substantial to say, so all they could do was spend entire episodes on this dumbass shit. And there might be some of you watching this video who haven't seen this episode of the Boondocks and you want to know, oh, well, what was the episode actually about? Granddad dates a Kardashian. That's what the episode was about. You could write it from there. Anybody could write it from there. It's literally the easiest, dumbest, most brain-dead jokes you could think of. And again, why does this exist? Why does this exist? Why does this exist? Hey, real quick, this is a post-recording, I guess editing chill. Just coming in to say, I know I kind of went crazy on this episode, and I still do hate this episode. I still think it's trash, but I neglected to mention one aspect about this episode that I think is important to at least mention. There is an effort that the writers made to try to mention a character who is supposed to be like, oh, this is the type of person that we should focus on, this Mother Teresa, like war survivor, patriot, revolutionary that Huey meets in the hospital. And I get it. I get this, what they were trying to do. And then at the end, showing that even they can be corrupted. None of it matters. The episode still sucks. They tried, I guess. So that's something to give them brownie points for. But yeah, I just wanted to come in and say that because I know some people might mention it, that they did actually have some sort of message in this episode, but even that message I feel like was kind of trash, and they went back on their word for it at the end by making them also a whore for fame. So, welcome. But the next episode is one that I'm actually kind of conflicted about. It's called Freedom Land, and considering that this is the climax and conclusion to the whole enslaved freemen's arc, it probably should have been the season finale, but hey, Pretty Boy Flizzy had no business being the season opener, so trying to make sense out of any of this shit is just wasted effort. This episode should have been great, but for some reason, none of the moments that should have hit hard really hit at all for me. It should be pretty obvious by now, but I really love Huey as a character. I love when he gets the chance to shine and talk his radical freedom fighter. Some of my favorite moments from season 1 involve him trying to talk sense into people, but something about the way he just robotically drops generic quotes about freedom and revolution in this episode make me feel like I'm watching somebody pretend to be Huey, which I guess is what I'm watching because Aaron Magruder didn't write this shit. When I heard the quote from Khalil Gibran that Huey dropped in the Wingman episode,
"Your pain is the breaking of the shell that encloses your understanding. It is the bitter potion by which the physician within you heals your sick self. Therefore, trust the physician and drink his remedy in silence."
Huey dropped in the Wingman. Aaron Magruder didn't write this shit. When I heard the quote from Khalil Gibran that Huey dropped in the Wingman episode,
"Your pain is the breaking of the shell that encloses your understanding. It is the bitter potion by which the physician within you heals your sick self. Therefore, trust the physician and drink his remedy in silence and tranquility." Khalil Gibran.
that made me go, damn, that's something I've never heard before. Clearly, whatever writer chose that quote really knows their stuff. When I hear Huey in this episode say things like, "What good does it do a man to gain the world and lose his whole soul?" my reaction is, you just Googled revolutionary quotes and picked the first thing you saw. And none of this is to say that the things that Huey says in this episode are wrong or off base, but the Boondocks was usually very good at towing that line of being too preachy really well. This episode feels like one of the few times they crossed that line and got up a little too high on that soapbox. But writing good social satire is very hard, which is another reason why I really respect Aaron Magruder, Carl Jones, and Rodney Barnes so much, because when they were writing the Boondocks, they were able to do it so well consistently for 3 seasons. I do have to say though, the final battle sequence in this episode is undeniably dope, and it did feel good to finally see the Freeman family get their freedom back. Like I said, I'm conflicted about this episode, but all in all, I appreciate that they at least tried to be something more substantial than just dumb surface level jokes about pop culture. And speaking of dumb surface level jokes about pop culture, the next episode is called I Dream of Siri, and it's all about Granddad getting an iPhone with the Siri app and the app becoming jealous and controlling of Granddad's life and using its power to destroy everything in Granddad's world. This episode is also kind of dumb, like not as stupid as the Kardashian episode, but it just feels like it's in the wrong show. I've said before that the Boondocks isn't just a black comedy, it has a lot of jokes and subject matter that extends outside of black culture. But this just felt like a Saturday Night Live sketch, and a really uninspired one at that. I get the whole technology is dangerous message that this episode is trying to poke fun at, but man, this episode just still feels lazy as hell. Like, this is an episode that I always forget actually exists. Like, whenever I go through the episodes of the Boondocks, or God forbid ever decide to rewatch season 4, I'm always surprised to remember that this episode was a thing. But the next episode truly breaks my heart because it basically ruins the perfect Stinkmeaner trilogy by making a completely unnecessary 4th edition. So it's basically the Thor Love and Thunder of the Boondocks universe. And I get that every season of the Boondocks needs a Stinkmeaner episode, but God.
Look how they massacred my boy.
I will say this. At least they're upfront with their lazy ass writing in this episode. Like, it starts with them just basically saying, like, yeah, we're not trying, we don't give a f, and we don't care if you get. Basically saying, like, yeah, we're not trying, we don't give a f, and we don't care if you give a f.
Welcome to the Nigga Moment Reboot. This is where we're gonna do some shit we already did and just pretend you didn't see that shit the first time. That's right, nigga. We don't respect your intelligence.
To just completely rehash the first Stinkmeaner episode after 3 seasons worth of growth and development on behalf of Granddad, like, that's actually just crazy. Not to mention, it's just growth.
Yes.
To just completely rehash the first Stinkmeaner episode after 3 seasons worth of growth and development on behalf of Granddad, like, that's actually just crazy. Not to mention, it's just 10 times worse than the original. You could argue the whole point of the episode is to hit on the idea of rehashes and reboots, sort of like what that new Matrix movie did, but just like that new Matrix movie, this episode sucked. New Matrix movie did. Episode is to hit on the idea of rehashes and reboots, sort of like what that new Matrix movie did, but just like that new Matrix movie, this episode sucks because it's still a stupid rehash. I will say though that the message about your anger and hatred potentially turning you into what you actually hate, that was pretty well done. It just feels so unnecessary, and the messages of this episode just feel so all over the place that I can't even focus on that because I'm too pissed at everything else that I'm seeing. But hey, once again, pretty cool fight scene. And then the last episode of season 4. The last episode of the Boondocks. The last episode of my favorite show ever. The last episode is called The New Black, but I gotta be honest, I don't really want to talk about it. I don't like this episode. It's very possible that I don't like this episode because 1, it's not really that funny, 2, makes Riley seem like a horrible character, and 3, makes no sense as the finale of the show. But maybe I just hate it because it's the finale. Because every time I watch this episode, I'm reminded that this is it. There is no more Boondocks after this. And that's a sad thought. After season 4 was received so harshly by fans and critics, any hope for another season was pretty much dashed instantly. Not that people really wanted a 5th season at this point in time anyway. It's been almost 10 years since season 4 first aired. It's almost universally hated, but there are still some people who defend it. Every couple of years, some rumor about a new season of the Boondocks or some Uncle Ruckus movie or whatever the hell pops up, and people start talking about how much they missed the show and hope it comes back someday, but I am never one of these people. We live in an era of entertainment that is overflowing with reboots and remakes. I can't even begin to name all of the shows or movies from my childhood or even people's childhood who came before me that have come back and tried to make another run. Let me ask you this. How many of those are any good? How many of them live up to your memories of the original? How many of them exceed the quality of the original? In my experience, almost none. Season 4 of the Boondocks taught me this lesson a decade ago. Most of the best art is simply a product of its time. It came out at the right time and found the right group of people to be successful. The art that moved us in 2003 probably wouldn't have had that same effect on us in 2023. The world changes, culture changes, people change. The Boondocks is an amazing series, but after doing retrospectives on each season, it's pretty clear to me that the show only got worse with each new entry. Sure, the drop in quality from season 1 to season 2 and season 2 to season 3 was small, but it was there. I don't enjoy making videos about art that I don't enjoy. I dreaded talking about this. I didn't enjoy talking about this. But I'm glad I did talk about this. All things good and bad eventually come to an end. This is a universal truth that can be just as positive as it can be negative. So, season 3 of the Boondocks. I have a lot to say about this season. much more than I thought I would going into making this video. Season 1 of the Boondocks had a large focus on great evocative storytelling and a critical and satirical eye towards black culture, as well as how the world at large viewed black culture. Season 2 took a huge step back from the layered and nuanced messages from Season 1 and focused mostly on the satirical and over-the-top comedy elements of the show. If I could describe Season 3 of the Boondocks in one word, it would be epic.
The fuck are you talking about? That shit stinks.
Yeah, I expressed how I feel about this episode in my tier list video where I ranked every Boondocks episode from best to worst, and I actually got a good amount of pushback on my negative opinions toward this episode. I don't know. All I can say is I did rewatch it, and all that did was remind me why I think it sucks so much. It's a boring concept, it has no meaningful message really, most of the jokes are dumb as hell, and it pretty much has no bearing on the rest of the show at all. It's kind of crazy how most of the granddad focused episodes in Season 3 are some of the worst in the season and the series overall. I said it before and now I can confidently stand on it. 10 toes down. Mr. Medicinal is the worst episode of the true 3 seasons of the Boondocks. There are a couple of episodes that maybe come close, but this episode has been firmly at the bottom of my list for a decade now, and I don't ever see that changing.
This is bullshit.
The next episode is a return to the epic pacing formula that Season 3 is known for, and man, this whole virus changing the world thing feels familiar for some reason. This episode is called The Fried Chicken Flu, and it's based on the real-world event of KFC coming out with a new brand of chicken and then quickly running out because people bought too much of it too fast, and then this caused riots and chaos throughout the country. Huey and Jasmine were a great duo in Season 1, and it's always annoyed me that the writers gradually paired them up less and less as the show went on. So even though we only get a few moments of Jasmine once again being Huey's one and only supportive confidant, it's nice to see that the dynamic of their relationship is still somewhat present. You can also see in this episode how much Huey's outlook on the world has changed. He's no longer trying to save everyone, now he's just trying to save the people closest to him. But at the end of the day, he is still trying to save people. He may be retired from being a domestic terrorist freedom fighter, but he still plans to hit the fan. Season 3 has a few instances of all the main cast coming together in some epic scene, and I really love the one from this episode where they're standing on top of the house and throwing down tear gas on people. The Boondocks started as just a small comic strip about 2 brothers and their granddad in the suburbs, but by Season 3 of the show, there's a whole beloved cast of hilarious and interesting characters that the fans have become invested in. This episode's solid. As I said, it's got that great epic pacing, it's got solid action, some good moments, the whole cast is in it pretty much. Definitely one of the standouts from the season.
There's no need to be homophobic. Eat it, you pussy punk bitches!
The next episode is called The Color Ruckus, which is a play on the classic slave film The Color Purple, which, did you know that Steven Spielberg made that movie? Weird. But anyway, this episode is the long-awaited origin story of everyone's favorite self-hating racist, Mr. Uncle Ruckus, no relation. The basic plot summary is that Uncle Ruckus's grandmother comes to Woodcrest because she's finally dying, and she forcibly takes refuge in the Freeman house because she likes the ambience of the place and wants a nice home to die in. Uncle Ruckus's father, Mr. Ruckus, comes to watch his mother die, and he brings along Uncle Ruckus's mother and his 2 brothers, Daryl and Darrell. We find out through flashbacks that Uncle Ruckus was the product of a very abusive home and was raised by a crazy mother who lied to Ruckus his whole life, telling him that they found a white baby on their doorstep one day and raised him as their own. And Ruckus, unfortunately, had the heartbreaker revitiligo since birth, and he just became more and more black-skinned over time. The episode eventually ends with the grandmother dying at the funeral, Ruckus standing up to his father right before he falls into his grandmother's casket and dies with her. I said earlier that in the 2 Ruckus-centric episodes in Season 3, the writers really set out to try to humanize Uncle Ruckus. In the Jimmy Rebel episode, they showed that Ruckus could be sympathetic in the present, and in this episode, they showed that Ruckus can be sympathetic in the past as well. Cycles of abuse are a real thing, both within the black community and within all cultures. Hurt people, as the cheesy saying goes, and within all cultures. Hurt people, as the cheesy saying goes, but cheesy as it might be, it's definitely still true. It would take insane levels of abuse, trauma, and indoctrination to create a monster like Uncle Ruckus, but a lot of times in the real world, it can take far less abuse, neglect, and manipulation to turn impressionable children into broken and destructive adults. All that being said, This scene is still somehow indescribably hilarious to me.
Miss, I want to be a doctor when I grow up.
Nigga, did I just catch you wanting to be shit?
Oh, sweet Jesus! Lord have mercy! My baby!
The season 3 and some might say series finale of the Boondocks is called It's Going Down. I said near the start of the video that It's a Black President Huey Freeman could have been a great series/season finale in its own right, but It's Going Down is still a pretty good ending. The basic premise of the episode is that the world-renowned anti-terrorist agent Jack Flowers gets a tip that a large-scale terrorist attack is going to hit the peaceful town of Woodcrest, and he assumes that Woodcrest's very own. The first episode of season mostly on the satirical. So, Season 3 of the Boondocks. I have a lot to say about this season. Much more than I thought I would going into making this video. Season 1 of the Boondocks had a large focus on great evocative storytelling and a critical and satirical eye towards black culture, as well as how the world at large viewed black culture. Season 2 took a huge step back from the layered and nuanced messages from Season 1 and focused mostly on the satirical and over-the-top comedy elements of the show. If I could describe Season 3 of the Boondocks in one word, it would be epic. So many of the episodes have a grandiose, larger-than-life quality to them that's kind of hard to explain if you haven't seen it for yourself. If the Boondocks can be counted as an anime series, then Season 2 felt like a really funny filler season that kind of got away from a lot of the core elements of the series. One of the biggest core elements being a large focus on Huey's arc of trying to be the hero that nobody seems to want. Season 3 in a large focus on Huey's arc, a lot of the core elements of the series. One of the biggest core elements being a large focus on Huey's arc of trying to be the hero that nobody seems to want. Season 3, in a certain way, feels like a return to form and a return to Huey's story. They also brought back moment-specific background music and a real score, and different from Season 1 though, the music feels much more dramatic and orchestral, I guess. Season 2 had a lot of small, contained stories with minimal stakes, but almost every episode of Season 3 seems to put the Freeman family and the citizens of Woodcrest in life or death situations. Season 3 has some great hits and also some big misses, and even though I wouldn't say it's the best season, I would say it's the most creative season, and it takes big risks that often pay off more times than not. I started making these retrospective videos to highlight Season 1, but more specifically, I wanted to highlight the genius of Huey's arc in that season. Season 1 portrayed Huey as a sort of wide-eyed and optimistic, if not a little bitter and jaded revolutionary. Season 3 is that same kid, but now almost completely disillusioned with the idea of saving anyone. It's not nearly as consistent as Season 1, but Season 3 serves as a solid bookend to our favorite afro-haired freedom fighter's journey, and it all starts with the brilliant season opener. The first episode of Season 3 is legitimately one of the best season opening episodes I've ever seen. It's actually so good and so perfectly parallels the Season 1 finale, The Passion of Reverend Ruckus, that a part of me wishes it was actually the Season 3 the best season opening. The first episode of Season 3 is legitimately one of the best season opening episodes I've ever seen. It's actually so good and so perfectly parallels the Season 1 finale, The Passion of Reverend Ruckus, that a part of me wishes it was actually the Season 3 finale instead of the opener. The episode is called It's a Black President Huey Freeman, and the plot. The first episode of Season 3 is legitimately one of the best season opening episodes I've ever seen. It's actually so good and so perfectly parallels the Season 1 finale, The Passion of Reverend Ruckus, that a part of me wishes it was actually the Season 3 finale instead of the opener. The episode is called It's a Black President Huey Freeman, and the plot is that the famous German documentarian Werner Herzog is making a documentary about the 2008 presidential election, and more specifically, how black Americans feel about the prospect of a black president. He eventually comes to Woodcrest and finds the Freeman family and all of their crazy neighbors and decides to zero in on them as the subjects of the film. Granddad, Riley, Thugnificent, the Dubois, everyone is gleefully excited about the future of America with Barack Obama as president. Well, Ruckus is predictably against it, but you probably already figured that. Huey's feelings on Barack Obama are a little different though, and by a little different, I mean indifferent.
Aren't you excited, little man? What's supposed to mean?
Despite his race, Huey doesn't see Barack Obama as much different than any other white president who came before. He may not be the incompetent moron that George W. Bush was, but to Huey, he's not the black messiah that people are praising him as either. When the black community catches wind of Huey's indifference toward Obama and his lovely family, Huey becomes public enemy number one, which leads everyone, including Granddad, to denounce him. Huey makes a plan with Uncle Ruckus of all people to flee the country to avoid what Huey says will be the end of America. But Huey's great plan is once again foiled before it can even start because Ruckus gets nabbed by the FBI for terroristic threats, so Huey couldn't get a ride. Granddad, Riley, and the rest of the people of Woodcrest slowly realize that Obama may not be the hero that they thought he would be, and the episode ends with pretty much all of them feeling disappointed and betrayed by Obama's empty promises of change. I remember 2008. I remember being a kid who wasn't old enough to vote, but was still old enough to follow politics. I remember for the first time in my life being interested about who the president was going to be. I remember being excited about the prospect of finally having a respectable figure be the president of the United States instead of a walking punchline like we had for the last decade. I remember being inspired seeing a black man attain the highest and most powerful position in the world. Regardless of what you think of Barack Obama and his 8-year stay as president, the amount of hope and inspiration he brought to myself and other people like me can't be understated. We had for the last decade. I remember being inspired seeing a black man attain the highest and most powerful position in the world. Regardless of what you think of Barack Obama and his 8-year stay as president, the amount of hope and inspiration he brought to myself and other people like me can't be understated. For a lot of Americans, he was more than just a man or a president. He was a symbol of a brighter future and endless possibilities for minorities in this country, and other people like me can't be understated. For a lot of Americans, he was more than just a man or a president. He was a symbol of a brighter future and endless possibilities for minorities in this country. Now, did he deliver on all of this hype and potential?
How about no?
No. Obama kind of got universal healthcare going a little bit, and he bombed a lot of innocent Muslims along the way, but he was pretty mid as far as presidents go. But compared to what came before and what came after, mid might not have been too bad in retrospect. While he's being interviewed by Werner Herzog, Huey says that hope is irrational, which is a very dark way to look at the world, especially from someone who once claimed to be a revolutionary freedom fighter. I spoke in the intro about how Season 3 is the conclusion to Huey's arc that was started in Season 1. The first episode is the perfect tone setter for where Huey is at mentally for most of this season.
What's the point of talking if nobody ever learned?
He basically has given up on saving people. He's grown tired of fighting the losing battle of trying to inspire change in people who simply do not want to change. With every interview from Werner Herzog in this episode, you can see and hear the blind optimism and shameless ignorance that hopeful people speak with when it comes to Obama and the idea that America could change overnight by electing a black president. As Werner Herzog says in the episode, this is the danger of too much hope. And Important figure inspires one group of people to rise up based on ignorance, and this causes a dissenting group to be inspired by another important figure, which then inspires another group, and so on, back and forth until one day the dam breaks and all hell breaks loose with it. If there's one thing I've learned about the Boondocks after all of these years, it's that the show is amazing at predicting the future. But just this once, I'd like the whole end of America thing to not come true, at least not yet. I just started making money from this YouTube and I'm trying to eat, baby. But now we go from talking about black presidents and the downfall of America to another rapper blowing all of their money on stupid shit and ruining their lives. Episode 2 is called Rags to Bitches. I mentioned in my season 2 retrospective that things would get much sadder for Thugnificent and CH for blowing all of their money on stupid shit and ruining their lives. Episode 2 is called Rags to Bitches. I mentioned in my season 2 retrospective that things would get much sadder for Thugnificent in season 3. It hasn't even been 3 episodes in, and this man is already about to hit rock bottom. This episode depicts the all too real downfall of the rapper Thugnificent, who back in season 2, which aired in the year 2007, was on top of the music world and was a sort of caricature of the typical bling rap era superstar of the time. Season 3 of the Boondocks released in 2010, and the 2010s marked a large cultural shift in hip-hop. The gangster rap era was dying out, and the legends of that genre who grew up selling crack on the street and committing violent crimes to survive were being replaced by the more genre who grew up selling shift in hip-hop. The gangster rap era was dying out, and the legends of that genre who grew up selling crack on the street and committing violent crimes to survive were being replaced by the more sensitive and slightly more privileged melodic rap artists that grew up admiring their music from afar. Basically Drake, Big Sean, Kid Cudi, Kendrick Lamar, J. Cole, even Soulja Boy, kinda. They all blew up in the 2010s and replaced the gangster rappers of yesteryear. By the 3rd season of the Boondocks, Thugnificent has become one of those gangster rappers of yesteryear, and after believing he would never fall from the top of the world, he crashes hard. He loses his mansion, he loses his friends, he loses his money and fame. He basically loses his identity. But I always did love the parallels of how he first arrived in Woodcrest in his debut in season 2, and how he arrives at Granddad's door at the end of the episode, now as a UPS delivery man. It's easy to shame and ridicule people who have it all one day, then blow it all the next, but there's nothing shameful about working for a living and trying to support and better yourself, even if it's a menial job. And I really love for that the rest of season 3, you still see Thugnificent in the episodes just as he was before, only now he's a regular guy. He still acts exactly the same though, and that's a sign of a man with integrity and character. Good shit, Thugnificent. Or Otis, I guess. The next episode is called The Red Ball, and I hope you like Shampoo references because I'm about to go stupid with them on this one. The entire plot and concept is a ripoff, or maybe homage is the better word, to an episode of Samurai Champloo called The Baseball Blues. In that episode of Champloo, our heroes run into a strange Japanese man who somehow found and fell in love with the game of baseball, despite the game being completely foreign to Japan at the time. So when a group of white settlers come to Japan, he bargains with them to play one game of baseball to determine whether or not the white men are allowed to conquer the island or are forced to go home empty-handed. The strange man enlists the help of our heroes who vary in their natural baseball abilities, but Mugen ends up being the baseball natural that saves the day and sends those white devils packing. The Boondocks episode is basically the same concept, but with Ed Wuncler Sr. as the strange Japanese baseball fan, America as the land that's about to be taken over, Ed Wuncler's equally as rich and corrupt Chinese counterpart as the man trying to conquer the land through kickball instead of baseball. Outside of the Champloo influence, the episode is all about Huey as the best kickball player ever for some reason, struggling with his motivation to even play kickball due to how badly he hurt a small girl the last time he played. More deeply than that, it's about Huey struggling to find